Cabinet here in Huddersfield Town Hall today. So I'm Cathy Scott, I'm the Leader of the Council, we're chairing this meeting. So membership of the committee, we have any apologies? There's one apology, Councillor Reynolds. We wish her get well soon. So any declarations of interest? Can I ask all members to fill in all declarations before you leave the chamber today? Mission of the public, standard. Are there any deputations or petitions? So we're moving on to questions from the member of the public. I've got the first question from James Brown.
Councillors, Kirklees Council is currently using the old Golf House Hotel in Out Lane for temporary accommodation, resulting in many issues and concerns for those being accommodated and especially for Out Lane residents, including policing, safeguarding, financial costs to the public, a lack of specialised and non-specialised facilities, no functioning kitchen at the hotel, with the kitchen being condemned due to structural issues, and poor transport links. The hotel had already been rejected due to issues and concerns in 2021 by the Home Office and mayors for accommodating asylum seekers. Kirklees Council has refused to cooperate with freedom of information requests on important points from concerned Out Lane residents, citing information cannot be released as it may put those linked to the hotel at risk, even though Kirklees Council has made information on the council using the hotel public for months through expenditure data. This has created a form of cover-up. Why is Kirklees Council still using the hotel when there are issues and concerns, and why is Kirklees Council not addressing these issues and concerns?
Thank you. Councillor Crook, would you like to reply?
Thanks, Chair, and thank you very much for taking the time to come in and present your question. I will try and answer some of your concerns here and also explain a bit more about our policy positions here. We are currently dealing with an unprecedented demand pressure in Kirklees from people looking for affordable housing. There is simply not enough housing to meet demand due to a national shortage, the cost of living crisis and other reasons. Kirklees do have a statutory obligation to prevent homelessness, and as a last resort, we do make use of emergency temporary hotel accommodation in various locations both within and outside of Kirklees, while long-term housing solutions are found. Our policy in Kirklees is to not confirm any of these hotels in order to safeguard tenants and ensure they do not become targets for harassment. Unfortunately, this protective effort can be undermined by individuals and is not always as effective as we would wish. Any property that we do use is inspected regularly to ensure that it meets and continues to meet relevant standards. In addition, we provide any welfare support that might be required and that is within our ability to supply. We work closely with other services who may also have responsibilities, such as the police and others, to ensure that our tenants are safe as possible at all times and that any impact on surrounding communities is minimised. More broadly, the people we house under this statutory responsibility can be amongst our most vulnerable residents, or just those of us falling on hard times in need of some short-term support. This could be because of no-fault evictions, as private landlords want to increase rents. Some will have lost their jobs due to ill health or redundancy. Some hard-working families will have simply been unable to keep up with mortgage payments due to the consequences of irresponsible fiscal policy last year and the impact of this on mortgage costs. Others will have succumbed through very human vulnerability, in my opinion, to addictions to drugs or alcohol or gambling. And some people in our care will be escaping violent relationships or the coercive control of an ex-partner or criminal gang. And some may be escaping war or persecution abroad and seeking safety with us here in Kirklees. All of these circumstances and many others can impact security of housing, and in particular, these last groups may, for their safety, require anonymity. It would be inappropriate and dangerous for them to be housed in a busy town centre or to have the location they are in advertised. Any publicity could place them at risk and would certainly add fear and anxiety to an already difficult situation. I absolutely recognise that any one of us could fall on hard times without fault or warning, and that what people facing these circumstances have in common is a need for our compassion and our care. Anyone who finds themselves in need in Kirklees is part of our community, and it is my elected responsibility and our collective responsibilities to support them. So thanks again for coming in. I hope I've answered some of your questions there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Moses. Mr Brown, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I would just want to ask, I understand the reason for placing people in there, the vulnerable people. My question still is, the accommodation doesn't seem fit for purpose. There's people that are vulnerable, got addictions. There's no transport links in Outland. It is a very poor bus service. The building itself has not got the facilities they need. So is it not inspected properly that these people are being placed in a location that's just not fit for purpose? I understand that vulnerable people need to be placed somewhere rather than being homeless, but this location, I just don't think it doesn't feel it's been inspected properly enough to suit the needs for what these people need.
So is your question, is it up to a standard?
Is it up to a correct standard? Yes.
Right,
and,
okay.
and
So there's one question there. Councillor Crook, do you want to answer?
Thanks, Chair. So I think I answered that question really in my response to your initial question. Officers will inspect any premises that we use for temporary accommodation regularly and ensure that it's up to the required standard. I have absolute faith in the officers of Kirklees to fulfil their function and fulfil their professional expertise in that respect. So I don't recognise your assertion in that, and I have passed on that concern to officers with respect to any temporary accommodation that we might use, and been reassured that they do fulfil their obligations in that respect.
Thanks for your attendance, Mr Brown. So we'll go on to the next question. This will be read out by an officer. This is under exceptional circumstances and at the discretion of me, the Chair. So Yolande will now read out the question from Shireen Terrell.
What work has been done to be certain that all statutory functions can be delivered with a reduction of 9.2 full-time equivalents or any reduction?
Councillor Davis, could you respond to that one? Is it Councillor Davis that we've got? Martin, can we have one meeting here? Come through me.
Yeah, as Councillor Bog just asked, this is concerning registry, so registration services. So Cabinet's been asked to approve to consult with the General Register Office, which is the national body that has the statutory powers over such registration offices. That's very important because they have responsibility for ensuring that we have the right security on site, particularly with documents. Proposals to the GRO will be to have one main central site and to explore the feasibility of offering place-based service delivery where the needs identified, and also a review of fee and charges. The current service is provided from two main sites, I think as many of us know, which have their own management structures. In any new model, the expectation is citizens will still be able to obtain the registration statutory functions through the review of fees and charges and a review of the management structures. Moving to one central site is expected to achieve the majority of the savings outlined in the proposal. Delivering the volume of registration statutory functions, that includes registering births, deaths, marriage and civil partnerships, will not be compromised in any way.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and I believe there's no supplementary, so we'll go on to the next question. This is another exceptional circumstances under Chair's discretion, which I'm allowing it. Yolanda, could you read the question?
Yeah, there's two questions on the library and customer service. The first one, are all councils cognizant of the fact that the proposed measures as outlined in the Cabinet paper entail the complete withdrawal of in-person assistance for services such as blue badge applications, council tax enquiries, housing benefit and travel passes, and a range of other support service and referrals? And then the next question, what provisions are in place to ensure that customers with significant mental health issues, visual and hearing impairments and other forms of deprivation receive the necessary support in the absence of in-person assistance?
Thank you. So people that are currently supported through the Customer Service Centre have to travel to one of two town locations and wait, as we know, to access face-to-face support. The integrated libraries model does not entail the complete withdrawal of in-person assistance. There will be face-to-face provision at all of the 10 proposed integrated libraries, including Huddersfield. That's where the Customer Service Centre is already co-located with the library, and in Dewsbury, with the knowledge and expertise to deal with a broad range of issues and inquiries. Libraries already provide this function across Kirklees, and staff are skilled in supporting people to access information and guidance. However, this support will be increased as part of the new model, and staff will take time to work through issues, or if preferred, simply direct to appropriate resources or services, provide support to complete online forms and transactions, and refer where is necessary. Throughout this, we will continue to work with our partners, such as Housing and Welfare and Exchequer, to mitigate any impacts. Our libraries are also integral to our commitment to place-based working and support the delivery of a number of community-based teams. This function will also allow additional wraparound support to be provided from these locations to those people who have more complex needs. So that's in response to the first question. So the second question, as previously mentioned, there will still be access to face-to-face support within the libraries, including in Dewsbury and Huddersfield. Libraries are warm spaces, places of sanctuary, and are welcoming and inclusive. They are dementia and autism friendly, provide accessible resources, adapted technology and software to support users to access information and services. They're a source of cost of living support, and staff are trained and confident in supporting individual needs. In addition, focused support for visually impaired citizens can be provided through Kirklees transcription service and for housebound individuals through our integrated community-based teams. Libraries work closely with a huge range of specialist partners to provide support and resources within their buildings that support health and well-being, economic resilience, digital inclusion, skills development, employment support, and also deliver and facilitate a huge range of support and social groups. All of this will be available alongside telephony and digital support at integrated libraries.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. That concludes the members of the public questions, I believe. So we're now going on to the elected members' questions at item 6. So the first person we have is Councillor Greaves.
Thank you. Simple one to begin with, hopefully. When will the consultation on parking charges for the villagers start, and what will be the process? Sorry. So it's in respect of the consultation on the introduction of parking charges. So when will that consultation start, and what will be the process?
Councillor Turner, are you answering that one on the parking charges?
I would have thought it was Councillor Butts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Councillor Greaves, for your question. So the statutory consultation regarding the introduction of parking charges for council car parks that are currently free of charge will commence before the end of February. The actual date has yet to be confirmed, and this will make clear what the proposals are and will give the people of Kirklees 21 days to make comments. These comments will then be reviewed. A summary report will be provided to Cabinet Committee Local Interest, who will then make the decision about final charges. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yeah, just that one. Will you be making it clear to all elected members when that consultation process starts, just to give us a bit of a heads up, because it has been said a few times that it's going to be starting in February. We're in middle of February, so I think we're all probably keen not to not to miss it when it does begin.
Middle of February, missed it.
So would you be okay to just do a reminder to all 69 that of when it started and what the process is when it starts, rather?
So the wording was before the end of February. So we're hoping it will be before that. But as soon as sort of we get a date on that, we will make sure that everybody is aware of that.
Lovely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Martin, can I ask you to turn your mic off? Councillor Sheard, turn your mic off. Councillor Greaves, can you turn your mic off as well, please? Okay, so I'm going to bring you... Oh, Greg. Greg, sorry. Need new glasses. Right, okay. So the next question is Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. So, following the recent sudden shock announcement that Valley View Care Home is to close, and while I understand officers are working very hard behind the scenes with the unfortunate people who are caught up in this, please can you tell me if there are sufficient places at other care homes in Huddersfield to accommodate all the residents who are impacted? Thank you.
Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Munro-Allison. Yes, we found out very late in the day. The directors only spoke with the family and staff on Friday, and we heard last minute on Wednesday that they were thinking of that. Obviously, it's a privately registered home. There are 46 residents. Initially, they said that there would be a 4-week notice period. As you are aware, that is not the case. Ideally, we will work on that 12-week process. Within the care home family, if you like, there is sufficient place for the 46 residents. The officers are working very closely with the private sector to look at where those, where first of all the families and the residents would want to be placed, but also to ensure that they've got a safe transfer into new provision. Obviously it's early days, so but yes, there will be enough facility within the patch.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Moore, supplementary.
Thank you. So have you been told what the future plans are for the building once it closes? Thanks.
No, we haven't been told what the future plans are, but it's a purpose-built care home, and so the assumption would be that another care provider may wish to purchase it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going on to the next question. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Since Christmas, I've had a Denberdale Conservative parish councillor publish on public forums that they know my family's address and have encouraged people in the public forum to come to my home to abuse me. Subsequent to the Conservative councillor doing this, I've received a threatening letter through my door, which was opened by my partner, which refers to my personal health, and a crime of harassment has been recorded by West Yorkshire Police. Does the leader agree with me that this kind of attempted intimidation is not an acceptable way for any political party's representatives to operate in a democracy, never mind a mainstream party of government such as the Conservatives?
Thank you, Councillor Simpson, and I agree totally with you. Any form of intimidation to any elected member or anybody is not acceptable, and I would encourage anybody, any harassment, report it to the police and also report it to standards as well.
Thank you, Chair. My supplementary is to ask you if you will raise this at leading members with David Hall, the leader of Kirklees Conservatives, to ask him to make a statement about whether this is acceptable conduct for his party's councillors in the borough, to ask him to make direct contact with the Denberdale Conservatives to make clear that any attempted intimidation or threats aren't acceptable, and to ask him to make a statement on whether it's appropriate for a parish councillor inciting people to come to my family's door and abuse me to continue to be a Conservative parish councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson, and I can understand the distress that your family's gone through with this. I'll raise it. I won't wait till leading members. I actually will raise this with David Hall today, Councillor David Hall. It's not acceptable behaviour. We don't want that. That's not part of what the Kirklees are about. So, yes, I will raise that today. Is there anything further that you wanted? Okay, Councillor Simpson. So I'm moving on. I'm now going to ask Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Chair. Can I share your concerns and also Councillor Simpson's? No elected member should be subject to intimidation either at home or when coming into this building. So I hope the matter's resolved well. And welcome to this side. I hope you'll enjoy it over here.
Stop poaching on with the questions.
Well, do you swap? You can have him, Ram. We'll take Will. Previously, it was said in Kirklees that the leadership work with people rather than do to them. So could you tell me why members of the public are not allowed to submit questions remotely, but have to attend, except in exceptional circumstances, a cabinet meeting in person, which could for some people mean taking half a day off work and obviously adding to carbon emissions trekking across the borough. For a member of the public question, surely we can take those remotely.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Bolt. It's very interesting. So there was a rule change that they have to be submitted, I believe it's 3 days before, and under exceptional circumstances, it's at my discretion if it could be heard. This one, there was no exceptional circumstances, so at that time, you know, I made the decision that it should have been submitted 3 days before and you have to be in attendance. So it was my decision. I accept that. It wasn't exceptional what they put forward, so that's why it happened.
Yeah, it was a general question, not a specific. So why, generally, can't we accept that people can take use of modern... we've had people before at the meeting, for example, the meeting when we discussed car parking charges. Elected members were coming in remotely. So we should be moving towards a rapid and agile council service and dissuading people from having to drive across the borough.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bolt. It's actually in our constitution, so if you're willing to change the constitution and work with us on the constitution, you bring it to your group leader, we'll have a discussion about it, but as I said, it was in the constitution and it is at my discretion, and I think I've been more than fair since I chaired this, that I have been very discretionary on questions and exceeding time, so I'll leave it with you, Councillor Bolt. If you want to take it to a side conversation, happy to have it, but it's a constitutional change it would require. Any further questions? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Chair. I've been contacted by a resident of my ward who I understand has also contacted cabinet members via email directly, expressing their heartbreak at the removal of the trees on Queensgate as part of the cultural heart, which was referred to in reported into the Huddersfield Hub recently, and I appreciate obviously the council's position on that, having read the quote from Councillor Turner. But my question is, could the cabinet member just outline if there are any plans to remove trees on Queen Street moving forward as part of the cultural heart? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. As you probably appreciate, I've also been contacted by people. I was contacted by people before we removed the trees. I've been contacted by people since we removed the trees. Those trees that were removed were part of the granted planning permission. It was always well known that those trees would be removed. As I say, it was part of the approved planning permission. So it's been well known. What we did is we went down there last Monday in broad daylight. We didn't do like some councils, do it in the dead of night or do it secretly. We went in full view of the public and took the trees down. You can the grading of those trees, they were graded very low, and they would have in the not too distant future we'll probably need to bring it down anyway, because they, as I said, they were very low grade quality trees. They weren't natural trees in that area. They were all natural British trees in that area anyway. So that's opened up the vista so that those wonderful ceramics are now visible for people. Queen Street is not yet decided, because we have yet to decide on what we're going to do with that part of the site, and there'll be further planning applications no doubt in the future as we decide what to do with that part of the site. But as I said, we took that in full view of the public. Everybody knew we were going to do it, and when we finished the cultural heart, there will be a net increase of trees, significant net increase of trees, and we won't be planting whips. They are mature trees that are already in the pipeline to be planted there. So actually we will gain by taking when we finish the project. So it's a positive win-win for everybody. Economic growth of Kirklees, cabinet investing in Kirklees, and we get more green plate spaces. A win-win.
Excellent news. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Councillor Turner, for the response, and it's good to hear that the new trees will have in excess benefits to the old trees. Just on the point about Queen Street, am I right in thinking that if there are trees to be removed, that there'd have to be planning permission granted of some aspect to that before anything was taken down? Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I would have to check the planning permission, what was granted at the time, on whether they were included in the planning permission at the time. I can double check and get back to you. But as I say, that part of the site is yet to be fully developed and work fleshed out what's going to happen with it. But as I say, win-win, more trees.
Hope you're happy. Okay, Councillor Greaves.
Yeah, I did give notice of 3 other questions that they relate specifically to libraries. If I may ask them now, I'm quite happy to wait for an answer, whether it be under item 9 or after the meeting. I think it'll have to be after the meeting, to be honest, for the nature of my questions. But if it's okay to ask them now, I'd like to.
Well, if you're happy to ask them now, but we should move on quite quickly. Do you want to take the questions now, Councillor Davis, or would you?
Can I ask a question?
Right. So, sorry, Councillor.
Quite happy to do that now, or it may be covered in...
Councillor Greaves, if you'd like to ask your question now, that's absolutely fine. Councillor McGuinn, I'll take your question after.
Thank you very much.
So the first question is, what were the objective measures used to determine which libraries would be integrated, which would be community supported and which would be community managed? Second question, Honley Library currently receives 15 hours a week of officer time. Meltham receives 20 hours. Neither receive any contribution from Kirklees towards their building costs. If the other 6 libraries that are proposed to be community managed have similar hours of opening, how has the saving of £912,000 a year been calculated? If the current level of staffing was retained in all 8 proposed community managed libraries, but there was no contribution towards their building costs, what would those savings be? So, just to be clear, for the community managed ones, they'll be looking to cover their own building costs and have no staffing. So the distinction is whether or not staffing is retained and whether support for building costs is retained. Under the proposal, both will be withdrawn for community supported. So the question is how has that 912 been calculated? And specifically in respect of Honley and Meltham that already cover their own building costs, I don't quite understand how this £912,000 saving is going to be achieved, because those staffing levels wouldn't reflect a 912,000 saving unless some of those other buildings have got astronomical building costs.
Right, so that was several comments, right?
Yeah, no, I know.
So can I remind members, we'll keep it to questions. Councillor Bolt, please turn your mic off. Councillor McGuinn, please turn your mics off. It's affecting the acoustics that's going on. So, Councillor Davis.
Certainly I can answer part of this. The detailed question, Leader, again, can go back to Councillor Greaves with that information. Obviously, there was quite a lot of detail in there around the costings and operational costings, but happy to share that information, not an issue. Clearly, if we'd had that beforehand, I could have presented that as well. In terms of the measure, the way in which we've looked at the libraries, this has been, we've looked at this in terms of using community managed model research and experience, and that's identified a number of foundational characteristics that are considered necessary for a successful community managed library, and they include areas such as existing strong community capacity, that's resources and assets, including volunteers and citizens, existing strong libraries, friends of groups, and again other volunteers, existing strong community infrastructure, where we have town and parish councils is obviously again an advantage, and we've seen that in the Home Valley. Smaller community-based library provision and underpinned by enabling support from council and other services. So these are the areas that are looked at. So when considering locations, we've looked to develop a model, we've looked a lot geographical location, strength of community provisions, community need, levels of deprivation, building usage for other service delivery, such as shared location with the children's centres, etc. So there's a range of areas that were taken into account when these judgments and decisions were made. It's not an exclusive list, and again, if Councillor Greaves needs more information, very happy to share that after this meeting by email, or certainly could get together and talk through that. But that hopefully gives a view of the key considerations that were taken with regards to how the selection took place. As I say, for the others, we need to put a little bit of work into getting that level of detail.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Are you happy to have supplementary information passed on to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
When the agenda item comes, I've got a few
Right. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to bring in Councillor McGuinn.
Who took the decision to claw back councillors' ward funding, please? Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Councillor McGuinn, me.
Supplementary.
Right, can the money that was clawed back be repurposed to spread around the other councils for the next financial year?
Councillor Turner.
A couple of things at this moment in time. We don't know exactly how much is in that budget because we've got to finalise the applications in the system. Once we know exactly what's signed, we will more likely use it to pay some of the overspend.
Thank you. And we'll now go on to Councillor Safdar.
Some of my residents are very concerned that some libraries or even citizen advice bureaus could well be closing. Many of my residents are very upset about this, and the impression with residents is that Huddersfield may well be downgraded as the de facto centre of Kirklees. Will Dewsbury be the new centre of Kirklees?
Can I just comment on that? That's misrepresentation there. That comment, I don't believe that that's fair on the public to hear something like that. So that's not quite correct. I'm going to bring Paul in on the libraries, and if, Graham, you want to contribute on anything on that, but it's certainly not a downgrade of Dewsbury or Huddersfield upgrade or any way like that. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. Yep, I would agree with your comment there. I'm not quite sure how the councillors come to that conclusion. Certainly in terms of, we've already referred to it earlier on in one of my answers to a written question, and I'll be talking about it later on, but certainly in terms of the libraries, we've worked really hard over a number of years to protect our libraries from the pressures exerted on us through austerity and lack of funding. That's been very successful with the help of a significant number of volunteers. We are taking that to a next stage, and we've identified 8 libraries, as we said, to move to a community model, and that will, we believe, work well within those areas, and of course aligned with our cost savings. So we're not hiding the fact that some of these actions are around cost savings. So there's not a degrading of Huddersfield to Dewsbury in that sense. In terms of the service centres, the 2 service centres are being integrated within the libraries. But in addition to that, what we're seeking to do, which was part of an overall strategy we had with Access Strategy, is to extend the reach of that support amongst our integrated libraries going forward. So there will be a broader reach where people will be able to access support within libraries, a number of libraries, as well as that. So from my perspective, certainly I don't see it as a downgrading between the two towns. Yes, we are having to make changes to achieve savings, without doubt, but what we're trying to do, as we were doing in other areas, is to try and do this in a way in which we minimise impact, and if we can, take the opportunity to expand and develop the service, and that's the intention with this approach.
Councillor Safdar.
And the citizen advice bureaus, are they guaranteed to stay because they're a vital lifeline, especially for residents with benefits appeals?
Yeah, I think just answered that. In terms of the customer service support centres, that function will be integrated into the library in Huddersfield and Dewsbury. That's already happened in Huddersfield because of the changes, because the cultural heart, the library is already in situ there. So certainly from that perspective, those 2 services will be there, and as I said, it'll broaden out further across a number of libraries. And I think, Councillor Turner, did you want to come in as well?
I think it's just worth pointing out that CAB is a national organisation and is actually independent of the council, for one thing. I don't understand what downgrade means. This cabinet has been very clear for the last few years. We want to see the whole economy of Kirklees grow. As somebody pointed out earlier, we made a start in the cultural art last Monday. We will see more works starting in March, and then we expect our main contractors to be on site in June. That's a massive investment in Huddersfield. We've got the massive investment in Dewsbury through the Levelling Up Fund bid that we're working on with the new markets. We've got the extra 20 million that the government gave over 10 years. That money's to be spent as well. We've got the town board, we've got the arcade in Dewsbury, all moving forward rapidly now. We've got money going into Cleckheaton, we've got money going into Home Firth, we've got money going into Hetman White. In fact, I believe they started yesterday. They started yesterday on the Hetman White blueprint. We're already, as we discussed yesterday, and we'll be coming in a couple of weeks, we're already looking at how we may develop Marsden, how that may develop in the future. So this cabinet is not downgrading anything. What it's actually doing is investing for the economic benefit of everyone within Kirklees to help drive our local economy, despite the best efforts of the government to wreck it.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. And I'll now move on to Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a question relating to the libraries. So where is the evidence to support that footfall to Huddersfield Library at its new co-located site has been maintained at the rate it had at its original location, just so we can gauge the success of this combination of customer services and libraries? Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
In terms of the move of the library, because of obviously the cultural heart development, that has been seen as successful. I haven't got the numbers in terms of footfall in front of me, but certainly more than happy to share those with you. One thing it's absolutely shown us is that that model of integrating the library and the customer service centre certainly works, and we've seen some of the benefits of that already with citizens going into the library and then accessing services whilst there, and also vice versa. So that certainly has been a benefit. But I haven't got the footfall figures, but I can certainly provide those to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. A supplementary, Councillor Munro?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this plan will further, in my opinion, will further dilute our already dwindling library services. I just wondered if the aim of this should be to actually do a consultation for the libraries first of all before you consider actually moving customer services into local library centres, because a lot of this depends on the model that will be adopted, and it may be that some libraries may not have any volunteers to actually run their libraries, so we'll just end up with customer services in our local library buildings. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Certainly, there is not an intention to reduce our library services, and as we know, and Councillor Turner, I'm sure, could to give us in more detail, there will be a new library built in Huddersfield that will be very much state-of-the-art and providing a fantastic facility going forward. Hetman White, as Councillor Kendrick will know, the plan is to build a new library in Hetman White. That's still part of our capital plan going forward. And up until recently, we have built new libraries as well, as we know, across the borough. So I think there is, I know there is still that commitment there. I don't believe the weight, in fact, when people have asked me the question, it's been the opposite to which you said, that they were concerned, would there be enough scope to provide the customer service support rather than just the libraries. So certainly I don't think we've got a fear at this point that we will see the library services being impacted because of the integration with the customer support. Again, we think it will strengthen it in terms of citizens accessing the library services and then also being able to access in a safe space a wider range of services and vice versa. And that's been, as I said, the experience that we've seen in Huddersfield to date.
Thank you. So I'll now go on to Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. As you remember, one of the first announcements that you made when you became leader of this council was around us taking what was, I think, an important step of trying to reduce the amount that we spend on our own allowances at a time that our residents are going through a cost of living crisis, and we were having to find savings and are continuing to have to find savings to the services that we provide. Can we please be provided with an update on the impact of that, given the formation of a new group who are claiming special responsibility allowances and are entitled to additional resources within the council?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think it has had an impact, if I'm being absolutely honest. It's obviously they've taken not only their basic allowances, but they've taken SRAs. And their choice whether whatever they do, but I am aware that Labour councillors did contribute 5%, and I, as leader from my SRA, contributed an additional 10%. So I can actually say we've contributed. There's an impact because we now have to redress and actually fund the monies for this extra group to take office. Supplementary, Councillor Wills?
No, thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, so is there any further questions before we move on? Councillor Bolt, this is the final question. You have 12 seconds.
Do you agree? Councillor Peter McBride, who was a councillor, once said it was meaningless and no one would base any reasonable judgment on the survey returns for Heckmondwike 3 years ago, which were very low. Given the equally low returns for the blueprint, which we've just seen, was he right?
Sorry, I didn't hear the start of the question, Martin. You'll have to shout up.
3 years ago, Peter McBride, when he was Deputy Leader of the Council, in response to a question about the consultation returns for a Heckmondwike issue, said that nobody would make a reasoned judgment on such a meaningless and low return. And given the response rates that we've seen for the Heckmondwike blueprint, was he right?
I'm not prepared to speak on my ex-colleague Councillor McBride. He was a wise old man, so he's entitled to make his own opinion. As you well know, we do loads of consultations, and the really challenging thing is to get the public to engage with them. And if they don't engage, we have to take the evidence that we get before us. So yes, if we do a consultation and they choose not to participate, I take that as they're happy with what we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Supplementary? 2 seconds.
Yep. Given that the Heckmondwike blueprint, one of the aspirations is a better link for the Spen Valley Greenway at the side of the bus depot on Swallow Street, how's that got to be resolved now that railway paths have sold out to a private developer?
No idea.
So that concludes the members' questions. So we're moving on to item 7. And item 7... So item 7 is the Corporate Financial Monitoring Report, Quarter 3 for 23-24. Councillor Turner.
Chair, thank you. This report, as you rightly pointed out, is the Quarter 3 Financial Monitoring Report. As Cabinet will see, there has been a significant improvement in our forecast overspend this year. Quarter 2 predicted an overspend of 16.1 million. Our predicted overspend is now 9.9 million, a reduction of 6.2 million over Quarter 2. This new predicted overspend is also a significant improvement on what we predicted at the start of this financial year. We have also been able to increase unallocated reserves to a slightly more acceptable level. This significant reduction is down to the hard work of officers in Cabinet delivering promised savings and preventing any unnecessary spend. However, we still do face challenges with increasing demand across many portfolios and service areas. But with continued hard work and constant focus on spending and further service redesigns, I believe we may well be able to reduce the current predicted overspend even more. Of course, in achieving a smaller spend than anticipated, we have had to reduce services, which sadly has an impact on our residents. But until we have a fair funding scheme for local government, we will continue to have to make cuts to services, which will impact on our residents, but we must reduce the overspend as much as possible, despite the impact on our residents. We have to live within the meagre means that we are provided to us by the government. So, Chair, I ask Cabinet to accept this report and thank all those who helped achieve a much better and more positive outcome than we had anticipated earlier this year.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I will second that. All those members in agreement? Support? Thank you. That's carried. So we're now moving on to item 8, Council Tax Provision. Within the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2013, empty property and second homes, reference to the council. Councillor Turner.
Chair, thank you. This report seeks Cabinet approval to implement 100% council tax levy on properties that have been empty for over a year. This is new legislation that was included in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023. This new legislation builds on legislation introduced several years ago that allowed council tax to be levied on homes left empty for over 2 years. When the previous legislation was introduced, we saw a reduction of empty homes by approximately 200. I hope that these increased charges will again create behaviour change and more empty properties will become available for residents to either buy or rent. We have a national housing shortage, and anything we can do to implement behaviour change to increase housing stock must be the right thing to do. As members will note in Index 1, there are some potential exceptions. As yet, we have not been formally notified by the government of the exceptions. I hope that this will be clarified shortly so that we can move and implement those exceptions, which I think are fair and reasonable. To get this report here today for Cabinet's approval, officers have had to work quickly and effectively across the council to get the legalities and governance sorted out, otherwise we would have missed the opportunity to get these changes implemented. So I would like to thank them for the time and effort they have put in, and I've never seen a Cabinet report prepared so quickly when officers are already busy beyond what we should expect of them. Chair, I ask Cabinet to approve this report so it can form of the budget debate in March.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'll second that. So all those in favour? That's carried. So we're now moving on to item 9, strength-based integrated community library and customer service functions and assets. That's Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. I think we've covered quite a fair amount of this previously, so I'll try and be brief with regards to this. The proposal has a number of key changes, and clearly the first one is that of the integration of the customer service function into the library estate, as we've discussed earlier. This will result in reshaping the existing 2 main customer service sites in Huddersfield and Dewsbury. These will move into an integrated offer in both libraries, alongside access to digital and telephony support across the library network. Also, it's about establishing the feasibility of developing a community-managed library model with targeted community-based libraries. The initial focus for the feasibility study would be on identified libraries with the foundational characteristics which I referred to earlier to deliver successful transition. And that's around community strengths, community demographics, capacity and resources. The Council, a package of support will be key to enable this transition. We will ensure that happens, and this will also be considered within the feasibility work. So in terms of recommendations to Cabinet, and what we're asking for agreement on is 1, to agree the overall approach to integrate the customer service and library functions. And as I referred to earlier, this is already a successful temporary arrangement in Huddersfield and also in Dewsbury as well. Huddersfield has been going longer than Dewsbury in that respect. Secondly, to commence a service change process to reduce both management and frontline staffing by the required amounts to achieve integration and savings. And then finally, to commence engagement with community partners around the proposed community-managed libraries model. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Now, we do have some councillors wanting to ask some questions. So the first one is Councillor Greaves.
Thank you. Thank you, Cathy. In respect of the integrated offer, I actually, well, the devil's in the detail, but that could be a great step forward. I guess it all depends upon how it's implemented and whether it's got the adequate resources. Community-supported libraries has always been something that I've been strongly in favour of. But we've been through this debate before about community-managed libraries. And there's a real danger here that those communities that have stepped forward to take on supporting their libraries are now going to feel somewhat betrayed that the trust that they placed in the council, which was, if you step forward, we will retain the staff support, is going to be withdrawn. There's a danger not just for those libraries, But the greater risk is when this council asks communities to step forward on other issues, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, we take one step forward and you're taking one step back, and that when we make an agreement, you don't stick to it. Now, I know that the financial situation's just got bleaker and bleaker, but the savings that are to be gained on withdrawing a half full-time equivalent customer service officer from some of the libraries is negligible. The possibility of getting the cost of the library service down, that focus really needs to be on those central costs, but also on encouraging volunteers to get involved with those libraries to make them community supported. If I heard correctly, there's 400 volunteers that are currently supporting the library service. I think you'll find that the vast majority of those are supporting the ones that are going to be moved to community managed. My question would be, is over the last few years, why haven't library services been really working hard to enable those communities that haven't stepped forward to step forward, to upskill them? Because we constantly go to the same communities and say, will you take on the responsibility for this service whilst paying for all the services that other people receive? It's not a fair offer. At Honley and Meltham, we've got committed groups that have stepped forward, and it does feel like a betrayal of the trust that they placed when they made the commitment to support those libraries, that now this proposal's come forward for the council to retreat out from staffing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Do you want to answer that, Councillor Davis? Because
Yeah, sure.
I have got two others that are asking. Do you want to take all the questions
Well,
and respond?
do you want me to take that first? I'll take that one
Oh, right,
first,
okay.
and then we'll do it, because I think that's probably easier. Certainly, I don't regard this as a significant step back, but you're absolutely correct, Councillor Greaves. There are savings, significant savings, which we're seeking to achieve through a whole range of changes in this area, both to the libraries and obviously the customer service centres, whilst doing our best to maintain the service, and in fact, we hope, and we're very optimistic, expand that service across the borough. And that is a reality which I'm not going to pretend is not there. There is a cost element to this. In terms of the groups, the many groups that are there already, and we do a fantastic job, the volunteers, I know within Holmfirth, my own ward, Holmfirth Library, amazing group there, and the work they do. Without them, let's be frank, we would be struggling right across our estate. And that continues to be work that the libraries team are focused on in terms of developing those teams, working with those teams, motivating them, and continuing to, hopefully open up opportunities for volunteers going forward. So I think, and that certainly there has been upskilling, certainly has work been done. But you're right, there are areas of the borough that struggle for a whole range of reasons to engage in such activities. Mainly be, in deprived areas where, but to put it quite simply, the focus of individuals is how they put food on the table and how they actually clothe their children. And actually, unfortunately, and this is something we really want to keep folks on to change, unfortunately, they have not got the bandwidth to actually volunteer. Many of them are doing 3 or 4 jobs, insecure work, 0 hours, and it's extremely difficult, therefore, to engage those individuals, even where those individuals want to be engaged. That does not mean that we're leaving those communities alone, far from it. We'll continue to focus on what we can do to build those groups, to build their confidence, their self-esteem, and through regeneration, through the work that Councillor Turner is doing to create opportunities which hopefully pulls them out of deprivation and actually enables them to have a fuller life, as do many of our citizens in other parts of the borough. So in terms of fairness and balance, my view is this is balance, because what it is doing in a very difficult environment is working with communities that we know have got the scope at this time, have got the ability at this time to provide, to work in this way, without putting unnecessary strain on them. There may be some individuals who feel that possibly we're always being asked, but I think the majority of volunteers I talk to do it very gladly, enjoy doing it, and recognise that they're contributing to the well-being of their communities. But your point's well made. You know, there's certainly there's lots more work to be done in terms of other areas of the borough. We'll continue to fight to ensure that Kirklees gets fair funding from whichever government is in power, and we've certainly not seen that in the last 14 years. And without that funding, unfortunately, we are going to struggle in helping those communities. And without economic growth and clear national economic strategies, along with policies to resolve the huge housing crisis that we have, then unfortunately, there will still be people who wake up every morning wondering how they put food on the table for their children and will not be able to engage in these things.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll go on to Councillor Gregg. Have you still got a question, or did you ask it before? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I've recently met with volunteers at the Friends of Murfield Library, along with Councillor Bolt, along with the MP for the area, Mark Eastwood. And I've also had dialogue with other groups across the district. And I'd like to actually ask a question on behalf of Friends of Murfield Library, specific to their library. What is the rationale / criteria used for placing Murfield Library, serving a large town of around 20,000 residents, in Category 3, which it's proposed to be placed into? And can the criteria be published for that decision? Thank you.
Councillor Davies.
I certainly think I answered that a little bit earlier, but certainly prepared to go through it again. The decision on all the libraries that look to move into this model was based around a community managed model, where we look at essentially areas of community capacity, the resources and assets available there, which are clearly focused on volunteers and citizens. And I know Murfield, for example, has a very, very strong group support in the library. Obviously, the demographics, other strong community infrastructures, in particular, and this is relevant to Murfield, where there's a town and parish council, where that council can also hopefully play a part in helping create that community-based library going forward. As I say, there's an example in the Home Valley with Honley, and certainly that could be an opportunity in Murfield as well, and an opportunity to ensure that library is even closer to the community and broadens its service in that way as well. So there are a number of things, and it also does include, I've already referred to it earlier, looking at areas, whether include them in terms of level of deprivation, building usage, and shared locations, etc. So certainly for Murfield, some of the key areas would be the very strong community volunteers, community involvement they have there. The presence of the town council is also a positive for a community model. And there will be other areas which, again, I'm sure the library team would be more than happy to share that in terms of any more detail. But essentially, that would be the approach.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you for the response, Councillor Davies. Just on the volunteers aspect of the question, of the response, I think it's one thing wanting to volunteer a couple of hours in a library when you're 80 years old or in your 70s. Quite another thing taking on the whole aspect of managing and maintaining buildings, and the whole aspect of volunteering for a few hours takes on a different meaning if you're being asked to do something like that. What assurances can be given by the council that this report won't lead to the closures of any libraries, for example, after the engagement with the volunteers has taken place? Should those engagements not prove fruitful and the proposals in this report aren't feasible, where does this leave the 8 libraries that are in Category 3 at the moment, based on the fact that the council are asking a lot of people to take on and manage libraries. If that's not forthcoming, and a lot of libraries that I've spoken to, the friends of groups, do feel that they are maybe a victim of their own success somewhat with this. So any insurances that could be given that this council will not close any libraries should the engagement not prove to be possible with regards to the community management aspect of things moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yep, thanks for the supplementary. So in terms of assurances, I'm certainly every member of this cabinet and the leader would be very happy to give assurances about the future of all services, assets within the council. Unfortunately, it is not one of us who can sit here and give assurances about any of that whilst we continue to see a situation where we are chronically underfunded, where we don't have long-term plans, long-term funding settlements provided. So not only would it be extremely difficult to give assurances around that, then it's around this particular element, the libraries, it's difficult to say that without, in terms of all of our services. Now, of course, we're not sitting here and closing down services. We're not going to sit back idly and let that happen. But I'm making the point that this is a partnership. And the partnership is between us and the community, but also between us and government. And government is simply not playing their part in this partnership. And so assurances we want from government in terms of adequate funding, fair funding going forward, so we can do the best for our citizens. In terms of the work that we will do on the libraries and helping them, there will be transition. We will work hard to support any community group going forward. There is a very, very strong theme within this administration of fighting hard to keep our libraries. We see the libraries as an essential part of our community, and we'll continue to do that. So I can assure all citizens that will be the case, and we've shown that over a number of years, and we're continuing to show that. This is an opportunity to keep our estate going in very difficult financial times with the challenges we're facing, but certainly assurances are not easy to come by in the current situation and in the current financial funding model that we have.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. And Councillor Iman-Safdar.
Of course, my residents share the disappointment and disgust at the central government cuts that are affecting so many councils across the country. But we do appreciate the role volunteers have in our communities, and they are community champions without a doubt. Will these volunteers have the same training as the customer service employees did? And are they willing to take this role of being customer service agents, essentially? Will they get the same access, the same support from Kirklees management teams that have dealt with complex customer service cases?
Councillor Davis.
Yep, thanks for the question. I'm certainly, I'm not going to comment on operational issues in terms of training and development. The intention is to integrate the services, and that's the intention, and that's to ensure that, I think as I described it earlier this week, that there is not a cliff edge for people. That I know that some people have been worried that all of a sudden we're just going to knock off these services. That is not the case. So what will happen is we will ensure that we train staff to a level that can provide that backup and those services, and that certainly we feel confident that we can do. The other thing that we want to do, and I didn't mention it earlier, and it's something I omitted, and it's very important, an aspect of this model is to upskill our citizens as well. So it's to give them the skills whereby they can be not just self-serve within the council, but they can access support in many areas of their lives. As we all know, and people talk about this almost every other week, banks have disappeared almost from the high street. To now access your money, you have to do it online. Generally, people have to live their lives through smartphones or PCs or iPads, etc. It is extremely difficult to navigate the modern world without those skills. So one of the things that is crucial for us, and we've worked on this for a number of years within our service centres and libraries, is to help upskill the people, so our citizens. So that will be part of this as well. There has something as well I should mention. Since COVID, we've seen a very significant reduction in footfall. I believe it's something around 60% in our service centres. And what happened during COVID, as we know in all elements of our lives, people did upskill themselves and they learned how to access services online and more remotely. That was a trend that we were seeing. That means that probably we've now got quite a number of people who are quite vulnerable and maybe haven't got access to digital access. So that's something that we will focus on, and we'll absolutely do everything we can do to ensure that they have that digital access and that digital poverty doesn't apply to them as well. So there are a number of elements in this, but yes, we will work hard to ensure that that service continues at the standard that we already have. We do not intend to be leaving our citizens down when they need help.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Safdie, is that okay? That's fine. Okay, so Councillor Davis has moved this recommendation. Oh, Councillor Bolts.
Thank you. Try again for Councillor Davis. He's been asked already if he'll publish the criteria on which the models are arrived at, and we haven't had a definitive response, so if we can try with that. He's mentioned about...
Councillor Bolt, can you refrain from making comments like that? I think Councillor Davis has actually gave you a very comprehensive...
But he didn't say he'd publish the criteria. I paid attention. He didn't say he would publish the criteria.
Councillor Bolt, I'm asking you to withdraw that because that's not correct. He's given you a very
okay, will you publish the criteria, Councillor Davis?
So Councillor Davis will respond to you.
Yeah.
But be very careful what you're saying, Councillor Bolt, because that's not correct what you were saying.
Okay. He did mention liaison with town and parish councils. It would have been reasonable for that liaison to have taken place before the town and parish councils in Kirklees set their budgets and precepts for this year. If there are funding to be arrived at, these bodies are very often very prudential, trying to give the best for their communities and try and operate within a very small envelope. So to find costs for something else without consultation before setting is not the best way to run a partnership, as was mentioned, and certainly the town and parish charter, which we had at one time, wouldn't have allowed that. There's talk about a feasibility study, but that's not enshrined in the recommendations. Perhaps we could reconsider that where it says Cabinet is asked to agree, there are 4 bullet points, and the feasibility study and its outcome and timescales is not one of those bullet points. Can we have, and will you publish then, data on book borrowing, footfalling and other usages of the 24 buildings so that the communities can try and establish and consider how each was placed into the 3 models? At the moment, there is nothing that indicates how the sword of Damocles has been placed over any of those buildings. Where can communities, town and parish councils, friends group, access information relating to running costs and dilapidation reports for buildings? Because again, in the community managed libraries, and I notice on page 7 or 61, there is a line that says the table below indicates the likely arrangements, but is subject to the needs of each location. So how will those needs be assessed? For example, when it talks about no building contribution and no staffing, if they are likely, they could go either way. But obviously, if it is likely that a community would have to run a library, it needs to know the day-to-day running costs, the condition of a building at the time of the thing, and also, for community managed one, who will own the building? Because if it's a community managed one, with no building contribution, is the community going to have to pay to bring up to standard a building which may have been neglected for several years? Para 3.4 talks about savings. will you publish a breakdown of the savings by each of the 24 buildings, so that, again, the public can see how its community facility is ranked in terms of costs against any of the others? It also says that there will be a reduction of 47.2 full-time equivalent staff. Could we publish the cost of the redundancies for those 47.2 people who are being reduced? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Davis, do you want to answer that? And regarding redundancy,
Yeah.
I've got to be clear here today. You are political leaders. You are not involved in operational. Operational content is not your business. So I want to make that quite clear. So I'm not going to have anything said like that. We stick to the politics.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Councillor Bolt. As usual, Councillor Bolt is more interested in asking a multitude of questions to try and catch people out and to try and make some points. I'm more interested in this administration, is more interested in ensuring that we can secure a viable service for our communities going forward. And in fact, to build on those services. In terms of the Town Council, I understand his point. I know Murfields are very prudent in terms of their precept. But as his government would say, I'm sure they must have reserves. I think his government said that council should use reserves when they need it. So maybe there are some reserves that could be used. I don't know in that regard. In terms of data and running costs and buildings, of course, during the transition, that feasibility of each of the sites, there would be discussions with the community groups. Nobody wants to set up a facility which has not got resilience and has an ability to be sustainable going forward. That will be the work that will be done during that feasibility study, and that work that will be done with the community groups that are interested in running this going forward. The savings are already there, they're published, and as Councillor Buck will know, operational management are targeted to achieve those. We have to ensure that we hit these savings, because if we don't, again, Councillor Buck would understand, we may end up in a similar position to some other councils with Section 114s, and actually our citizens being charged 10% council tax because of that, or even more. So I think that's probably, Leader, where I want to finish on that, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. So, Councillor Davis has proposed the report. I will second it. Members, all those in favour? So that's carried. So we're moving on to item 10, registration service. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. Again, we've talked a little bit about this earlier on in terms of the service itself. As people know, we have two centres, Dewsbury and Huddersfield, and the aim of this and the process of this is to look at moving that into one central location based in Huddersfield. This is because it's the most used location for birth and death registrations. However, we are looking at the opportunity for potential targeted support in localised areas, which is a long-winded way of saying, pop-ups, if you like, or a day in certain locations where there will be services provided. The General Registrar Office would have to approve this, and we will have to consult with them around the areas, as I again mentioned earlier on, around security of documents in particular, where they are transported from one location to another. If they do approve that, and if it fits within the budget perspective, we would certainly look to utilise the current council accommodation for such targeted support. And there are some registration districts outside of this district which actually do that. And a good example is Manchester City Council. And their registration district has its main site in the centre of Manchester for all registrations, but for birth only, it offers appointments for 1 day per week at 8 of its Sure Start centres. And most of these are targeted areas in the towns around Manchester. So there are models that we can look at and we can learn from. So that'll be something that we will be doing. And we would like to consider the opportunity to offer some appointments to register both births and deaths, so slightly different to Manchester. Should we receive Cabinet approval, we'll consult with the GRO, as I said, on the requirements, ensure that any proposed scheme meets with their approval, and we'll also identify which registration districts have done this, have made these temporary arrangements, if you like, or pop-ups, so that we can learn from them as part of this exercise. So I think on that point, Leader, I will stop there and recommend this paper to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I've got Councillor Gregg wanting to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. I note in the report that aside from wedding ceremonies, registration services at Dewsbury Town Hall will cease, and registration for death and births will have to be made in Huddersfield, I understand. Just on that point, has any consideration been given to the amount of grief this is going to cause for those people who have recently had a baby or are trying to report a death? Both difficult periods of people's lives, and obviously the people of North Kirklees and the Spen Valley have had lots to contend with regards to potential community closures taking place, the closure of Cleckheaton Town Hall, Batley Baths, the closure
Councillor Gregg, can we stick to the item on the agenda rather than steering into other areas?
The question is really, given the totality of all that and the situation with having to come to Huddersfield at a time in one's life where you're in a vulnerable situation, has any consideration been given to those people in that part of the district? Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yep, thanks for that question. Yeah, absolutely there has, and that's why I mentioned us looking at models that are used elsewhere, and the Manchester City Council model in particular, where they have appointments 1 day per week at different locations across the borough. In fact, this might equip us, or help, if we're able to do that, it may actually expand that cover for us as well. As I'm sure you're aware, south of Huddersfield, there is no service in that regard, and people do have to travel into Huddersfield. May well be that we're able to do something that helps some of our citizens there as well. But it will not be going forward, the same service. It will be different. It will be such that we will look to do everything we can to mitigate some of the issues outside of Huddersfield. But the view of this is to look at Huddersfield to achieve the efficiencies. And again, it is very clear it's about cost savings as well as just the service itself. But we will continue to prioritise appointments which are an emergency, and particularly around faith-based death registration. We will do everything we can to prioritise that. And out of our service to support these emergency appointments will continue to be available. So I think, again, Leader, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Did you want to supplement? Okay, Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thanks for that. Could you clarify if the registry service currently makes a contribution to the running of the town hall? Often in a place like this, a service, when it's sharing a location, will make a contribution either based on the footage that it operates or something. When I was looking at this, I thought, blooming heck, yeah, it doesn't seem that long ago since me and Cathy Scott was stood in Dewsbury Town Hall, smiling faces, cutting a ribbon and opening the registry office, but it's actually 10 years ago now. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun? Yeah. Got to have something for a dartboard. There's nothing in here about what's happening with citizenships. Those are a crucial part of the registry service as well. And those of us who've been in civic office will see that the great pride that it gives to people when they take British citizenship, and the number of those that we've conducted in Dewsbury. So if we could have a look at that. It says the electoral wards affected are just the Dewsbury ones. I would disagree, because as clearly it says that bus services, and there may be an issue that regular bus service to a number of towns in North Kirklees every ward in North Kirklees is affected by this report when the service moves. And equally, the report could say that there are a number of towns in North Kirklees which don't have regular bus services to Huddersfield. It says car parking is readily available. Interestingly, when I was coming in today, as I turned off the ring road to come on Albert Street, there's a nice brown sign that directs people to a multi-storey car park if you're parking to go to the Lawrence Batley Theatre. I think that was knocked down several years ago, so car parking is not that readily available. The consultation, again, when I was a lead member, we used to have the Kirklees Bereavement Forum, and every 3 months we met, have the faith leaders and the funeral directors, and that criteria, have they been consulted to see how this will affect them and their operation? Because obviously they are one of the key users. It is, obviously we're talking economics, it is a difficult situation, particularly when one is bereaved, and having to travel, if you don't have your own car or anything, having to travel across the borough to try and get from places like Birstall, or the Outreen pages, we may not have a direct service, or in some cases, it could take over an hour and a half to get from one side of Kirklees back into Huddersfield. So that isn't really efficiency. I can understand why you want to do it, but I'm wondering again about the costs and some clarity there on the potential impact on town hall funding. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Davis. And regarding you saying I'm caught in the river, we were in different financial times now. We're in a bigger squeeze now. I'm going to bring Councillor Davis in, but just to remind you, the building isn't closing down. It will remain utilised by the council, and I do believe the bereavements forum would have been informed.
Just on Dewsbury, on the town hall, certainly the intention is to use those facilities for council officers going forward, and that's part of the plan. That's being looked at. So it will not be a wasted resource in that regard. It's always difficult to respond to Councillor Boat's multitude of points in this regard. Yes, absolutely. Again, we recognise this is a change for people, and for some people, it certainly could be an inconvenience, to say the least, and particularly during some really difficult times, something which might weigh heavy on their minds. That's why we want to spend the time ensuring that we're looking at what we can do in terms of broadening the service and providing those extra days, as I said Manchester City do, they'll send the City Council, and what we can do across the borough to provide that help and support. And when we do that as well, hopefully in the same way as we do, we're talking about the libraries providing a more integrated service, that we would be able to do that and also provide other elements of support as well. So if somebody comes to register, whether that's a death, whether that's a child, or then there may be other things that they need to access that we might be able to support with at the time. So that will be worked on. Again, I'm not trying to say this will not be a change. It will. It is, unfortunately, it is a funding issue, but it is not unusual to see these sorts of services provided in this way in other boroughs as well.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. It doesn't appear to be any further questions, so Councillor Davis has made the recommendations. I'm happy to second that. All those in favour? Thank you. So we're now moving on to item 11, new commissioning approach, domestic abuse and support services. Councillor Pervez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So reports of domestic abuse increased significantly during the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to affect a proportion of the population. In Kirklees, more than 12,000 incidents of domestic abuse were reported to police in the last year. Domestic abuse has a devastating impact on victims, including children and places, significantly pressure on communities, employers and services. So our vision for Kirklees is to work together around individual families and communities to prevent, respond to the repair and damage caused by domestic abuse. with a range of services that are accessible and available to anyone who may need them. To ensure we continue to work to improve how we deliver this, a new approach to delivering services is being developed. Cabinet approval is being sought to change the Council's approach to commissioning domestic abuse support services within existing external resources. We are proposing to commission an outcome-based contract of 900k per year using non-council core budget with Kirklees Better Outcome Partnership. Specialist services provide a valuable role in supporting victims to recover from domestic abuse using external grant funding. We are wanting to work differently with those services, reducing the impact domestic abuse has on our communities. Working together, we want to reduce the risk of harm, reduce symptoms of trauma, improve independence and well-being, improve the multi-agency, improve access to services. This new approach really takes in account people's lives and how domestic abuse affects them. This may seem a brave step, but it's the best step we can take. It's the opportunity to design services around people's need. As a result of this approach, victims of domestic abuse should only need to tell their story once and get the right support at the right time. This is really positive. We are continuing to support some of the most vulnerable in Kirklees, even though we are in a very challenging times.
Thank you, Councillor Pervez, and I believe you're moving that. So, Councillor Ramsey.
Yes, I'd like to second and just very quickly say how supportive we are of the outcome-based contracts, the way that the specialist service providers will work together to prevent any duplication that we've got in service and to fill those gaps. It does show the council at its best when we're looking at a modern, efficient, effective and high quality service to be developed. So, yeah, we wish them well.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. So we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? That's carried. So we're now going to go on to item 12, Local Flood Risk Management Strategy 2023. Councillor Turner.
Chair, thank you. Sorry? This is Cabinet will have seen. It's quite a weighty report, and as I sat there on Sunday afternoon at home in my office thinking, what am I going to write? What can I say about this? Because it is a fantastic piece of work that's taken an awful long time. And it's hundreds of pages long, so there's no point picking any specific one item out of there. So I would generally like to thank all those involved in this production, as it's certainly no means feat to produce such a report, such complexity and detail that covers such a large area, and with, in some cases, some unknowns. As we well know, the risk of flooding seems to be increasing with the impact of our changing climate. The Cabinet will note this has been compiled with many external organisations and national bodies. Sadly, it's well documented we can't build our way out of flooding. We will always see some flooding, but by having a strategy, we can identify the most likely affected areas and make them as resilient as possible and be ready when we see excessive rainfall. The best way we can mitigate the fall is to slow the flow, and I would like to thank the many, many volunteers that have had and continue to carry out work on the uplands, providing leaky dams and better coverage of natural species of things like moss on the upland moors have a significant effect on the runoff and significantly help to stop the worst of the potential flooding. Chair, I ask Cabinet to accept this report and the strategy involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Any questions? Councillor Munro and Councillor Bowles.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So what difference will this policy make to sites already earmarked for housing in the local plan, such as HS9 in Fenny Bridge, with reference to placemaking, page 126, the aim of which is to make our local places more climate resilient for flooding by considering land use in combination with flood risk, when this specific site is steep-sided and it has Fenny Beck running along the bottom of the valley, and that already regularly floods, placing existing housing stock at risk. Thanks.
I know you're referring to the Fenny site, and of course you'll know that the bottom part of that is a flood zone 3, so that won't be developed. Planning deals with flooding. Planning deals with the runoff. Planning system is designed to take all these things into account when an application comes in. When an application comes in for Fenny, all those things will be taken into account. The drainage, the flood management structure, systems will be put in place at that particular point, whether that's attenuation tanks, oversized pipes, whatever's the best for that site will be form part of the planning permission, and should it be approved by planning, will mitigate those risks.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Monroe. So.
Okay, thank you. I haven't got...
Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Bolt.
Thanks, Chair, and join Councillor Turner in recognising the work that the Slow the Flow, many of the community groups have done, not only in Kirklees, but on across the South Pennines, which is the benefit of us all. Bearing in mind Councillor Davis's comment short time ago that I can be accused of raising a multitude of points about a cabinet report, and that this report covers 259 pages. Can Councillor Turner tell us what the principal benefits and changes for Mirfield are? Just one question then.
We've identified the flood risk, and I said earlier, when we see anticipated high rainfall, we'll be able to act and be ready for that rainfall.
So does the 259 pages in your plan mitigate any flooding in Mirfield?
Councillor Bolt, not only have I said this, but you'll find every single national organisation that has to do with rainfall or weather or flooding or whatever. We cannot build ourselves out of flooding. There will always be flooding. What we do, we identify that risk. We wait for the weather forecast. The weather forecast tells us there's a risk of flooding. We get a severe weather warning from the Met Office. We act accordingly to mitigate the risks of flooding. We cannot build our way out of flooding.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Bolt, I know you look like quite pensive. Do you want to ask another?
Thanks. Just the point I said was mitigate. I didn't say resolve. I didn't say can you cure it. Mitigation is something where you take measures to try and reduce or otherwise benefit. Mitigation can include things like you're putting runoffs, using sites along the valley where, as they do in Castleford, York, Selby and many other ways, where you can reduce the flood impact. You can't cure it. I mean, you can build your way out if you build a sufficient big hole, but the question is mitigation. What mitigatory measures are you doing?
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Two things. There's also the Flood Authority who deal with the major issues such as that, and from building extra facilities and trying to mitigate the responses of the problems in Mirfield is not a lot at the moment, because unfortunately, as you well know, this council is very strapped for cash and we need to provide services for our residents.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a report in front of us, been moved by Councillor Turner. It'll be seconded by myself. All those in favour? Thank you. So we're moving on to item 30, admission arrangements for the community and voluntary controlled schools in 25-26, and I've got Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Chair. This is an annual report that comes before Council. We're the admission authority for community and voluntary controlled schools in Kirklees. This is after a process of consultation, and it is seeking to determine the admission arrangements for 25-26, and it is time limited. We are required by the admissions code to have this available and completed by the 28th of February. There are two key changes on the pupil admission numbers, one for Purwell Infant and Nursery School and one for Savilletown C.A.B. School, both a decrease in pupil admission numbers, which both schools' governing bodies agree with and are happy about. So it is a recommendation for Cabinet to accept the outcome of this consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. I'll second that. So all those in favour? That's moved. Thank you for attending Cabinet today.